Sydney.
How's it going?
Good.
Are you enjoying your conference so far?
As much as I will enjoy a conference, I like meeting people, chatting and learning, but I'm definitely not the extrovert. If I fool you, I'm not an extrovert.
I'm not necessarily an extrovert, which you probably think is an entire lie, but I definitely need to recharge while I'm being quiet at home. But I'd love to learn about your business. Obviously, I know about your business, but there's a lot of folks out there in podcast land or wherever listening to this video. So you're the founder of Digible.
One of three.
One of three. Got to give the others credit, of course.
Sure.
Tell me about your business.
So we're a marketing services company, and then we have a tech arm as well. They're all, both under the umbrella of Digible, but our tech arm is known as Fiona. On the services side, we're more lead generation or paid media. Think like Google, Facebook, whatever,
Sure.
like social ads, SEO, that kind of thing. And then on the tech side of things, we automate a lot of the things we do on the services side, and then we sell those separately. So it makes us more efficient on the services side, and then people can just buy them off the shelf on the tech side.
So you're offering like kind of your business light version. If for kind of more of an entry level, maybe I don't have as much budget.
In some ways, like what Fiona started as was a digital recommendation engine. So we called her revenue management for marketing. So basically, we believe there should be an agnostic platform that tells you how much you should be spending and where you should spend it. And that went really well, and people liked it. And then as we started to develop more tech products to automate ourselves, so the recommendation engine came from the fact that it's really hard to scale myself. And instead of hiring a bunch of people and trying to scale me, we decided to build a tech that would help automate my life and the way I analyze campaigns and how I recommend budgets. And so that's what became Fiona. And then as we started to do that in other places, like for our SEO team, they used to have to write Google posts manually by hand. And so now we built a Google automation product. Same thing with our organic social team. They used to have to write a bunch of custom posts for clients. And now we automate that so that they don't have to. So that's where the tech arm came out of. Another good example there is we have a fair housing compliance tool. So when I first entered the industry, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that when I was asked by clients, like, are you fair housing compliant? I'd be like, sure. Yeah, no, I'm very fair about housing. I'm definitely not unfair, but I didn't realize until a couple of years in how, challenging that is, and how every zip code has different laws. And so then I got nervous because Digible's over 100 people today. And I got nervous, like, man, I don't know every fair housing, thing in the country. So how am I going to expect my 100 people, our 100 employees to know? Therefore, let's build a tool that will scan everything we do for a client and make sure that we don't violate fair housing. And then once we did that internally so that I would have some peace of mind, then we started to sell it as a platform so that people can monitor whoever their vendor is. If their vendor violating fair housing or not. And so a lot of times it's not a vendor's it's vendor ignorance, but also the platforms don't make it easy. So, for example, Google automatically can adjust your campaigns, and Google doesn't know fair housing. So Google may this is a true thing. Oftentimes in apartments, females convert better than males. So therefore, Google will automatically start bidding up on females and down on males, which is a problem. And so it doesn't know that. And so if your team doesn't know how to turn that off, or if they just turn on automation, Google will start doing that, and that's a problem. So that's why we built a tool to help flag and let you know, hey, it went off the rails. It could be an ignorance thing, but it could also just be the system ignorant,
Right. Absolutely. What I'm hearing is you have problems that of your own. You need automation to solve your own thing. You're like, oh, I think other people might want this too.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. What a great way to do business.
And also, we don't like to build things that are commodities. So we don't, when it comes to our tech, we don't want to build anything that is just going to do what someone else is doing. We want to push the industry forward. And so in that vein, a lot of our tech revenue comes from partnerships. So we have a lot of partners that use our technology to power their stuff. So if I built this fair housing tool, cost us more than 7 figures to build, there's no reason someone else should have to go and build the same fair housing tool. That's wasted resources in the industry when they could just use ours and then go spend their 7 figures on something else. So that's how I view it. It's like if it's a competitor and they want to buy my stuff, they can buy my stuff so that they can go innovate elsewhere and push the industry forward.
It's a lot more efficient to just sell through, white label your product through another vendor than go out and try to sell it each individual one too on your
For
own.
us, it is. Like, for those that don't know us, we don't have a sales team. And so to your point, because we don't have a sales team, it does help when we have a partner that takes our stuff and does something with it. It's just not in our model to end up hiring a big sales force.
So you're 100% inbound.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you get in front of your customer. How do you market your business?
We have not really marketed our business before. Most of our growth has come from referral. So do really good work, build a lot of trust with people, and then they send people to us when they hear about someone having a problem. So recently we brought on Trevor Park to help us with marketing so that we can help make our business more predictable from a revenue standpoint. But, we've shown up at events, but when we show up at events, we're not great at pre-setting appointments. We're not great at like follow-up. Like, it's just been an area where we've fallen down. But that's been more by design, meaning because we don't have the sales team, and I don't want to now tell my client services people that like they're expected to pre-book appointments. That starts to feel like sales. You're just not calling it sales. So I want our people to be helpful to others, help educate, and that goodwill over time will be good for us. So when we go to conferences, it tends to be more set up appointments with current clients that do business with us. Otherwise, be around and try to be helpful and get introductions that way.
I love that. So your marketing strategy is just like educate and let people come to you. And you have a podcast of your own, right? The Digible Dudes.
Digible Dudes.
What's the origin story of that show?
So we were probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 people at the time. And we, one of our folks, Giedel Selnick, had sort of been playing quasi-marketing for us, meaning we didn't have a dedicated marketer. She was on our SEO team. And she's like, David, you listen to more podcasts than anybody I know. Why don't you guys do a podcast? I was like, what? Me? I have nothing to say. What would I say? And she's like, come on, just do it. I will do an episode every week in perpetuity. So the way we decided to approach that was, let's just learn in public. Let's just be very open. So we have, anybody that wants to come on can come on, and we will just learn openly with them. So whatever is interesting to us is where we'll go. So it started as a lot of marketing, paid marketing, lead gen episodes. And then over time, we've skewed more into company building, leadership, culture building, and sharing our experience. Like, I don't know, one of our recent episodes, I had read the biography on Elon Musk, and I was like, hey, here's the stuff I got out of this that I think applies to our business. So it's very wide ranging. If people listen, great. If they don't, cool. It's more of a creative outlet for us and a way that Reed and I can talk to one another. We're just recording what we would normally talk about anyway. So there are sometimes Reed will come to me and say, hey, I want to talk about this. I'm like, let's save that. Let's just go ahead and do that during our Monday recording.
That's kind of my LinkedIn strategy. I just work in public, work and learn in public. Just if I'm trying something, if I failed, if I succeeded, put it up there so someone else can learn from my failure or my success.
I was going to say we should get connected on LinkedIn so I could follow this, but I'm not going to get on LinkedIn and watch. So, but I love that. I love the idea of learning and working in public. It's way more authentic. I think it really builds trust with people. People can tell when you're being sort of, I don't know, salesy or whatever. That's inauthentic. And so authenticity is one of our 5 core values. So for me, that really resonates.
So we had an interesting conversation yesterday about like leadership and how you're structuring your business and like leveling and all that stuff. What is the culture like at Digible?
Well, I don't think I mentioned it to you yesterday, but I'm a huge fan of the Who book. That really helped us set our hiring strategy and gives us a process of how can you hire to your core values. Because I believe culture is more about value fit than it is like who you're going to have a beer or play sandbags or whatever with. So based on that, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of having high compliance, that people meet our core values. We also each quarter rate the whole team. We're on EOS, which is a entrepreneurial operating system. So it's a way to run your company, and that has you quarterly go through reviews and say, okay, does someone fit the core values? It's a plus minus system. Or also, do they get the job, want the job, and have the capacity to do the job? That's a plus minus system. And that helps us try to stay aligned. And if someone starts to veer off track, we can say, hey, look, it doesn't look like you are, I don't know, fitting our core value of curiosity. I'd really love to see you try to, light that up more. And if long term that's not working out, someone becomes very inauthentic or they're not humble, it's humility is another core value, then, it's just not a good fit for us from an employee standpoint.
If I was to go check out your podcast today and I wanted to what's this shining star episode? Like, what's an interesting episode? Where should I start?
I often forget what we've talked about. As I said,
honestly don't listen to my own podcast either. Like, when I was there, I'm never going to listen to it.
I think it's a benefit that Reed and I often just talk about whatever we want to talk about, is that it makes it easy and I don't have to I don't prepare much, but on the other hand, then I forget like what was on a recording and what wasn't. But I often tell people to start with our year-end recap. So that's when we have the three founders, so Reed, I, and Nicole. So Nicole will be on, who runs our people and client services departments. And we'll just recap the year and what we learned, biggest lessons, both good and bad. Sort of like you said, here were the failures this year and here's where we think it went well. So I think that's a nice way to just get to know us. And also it's very wide ranging. You can get some quick lessons, at least as we saw them. So I've heard good feedback from people that listen to that. But I often forget, and people will come up to me and they'll be like, "Oh, I heard you talk about such and such," and I'm totally lost on where did you get this? And they're like, your podcast. I was like, oh, okay.
So, you're always curious? What are you curious about right now? What are you hyper fixating on and learning wise?
Learning wise, I'm very focused this year. This year, my personal initiative for the company is about making predictable revenue. So we've been around 7 years. We've only had 2 down months where we haven't grown revenue. So it's gone really well. The problem is our revenue has been volatile. There are times that we have, I think last month we brought on, I don't know, 140 properties or something. That's direct. That's not the partnership business. That's really hard to staff for. No matter, if you're tech enabled or all tech, you still have client success people and, whatnot. It's hard to staff for. So to make sure that we're not just hiring bodies and just trying to shove people through like it's a factory, we need to bring people on in advance. So that has been the most challenging, is how do we build a predictable revenue system where we make sure we staff well in advance and we're not trying to tell customers, hey, we'd love to help you, but not right now. Because that's what we did go through towards the end of last year. So that's what I'm learning a lot about. That's my initiative this year.
Awesome. I like that. Obviously, you're a technology guy. You have a technology company. What are you interested in right now? Is it not necessarily maybe something that you have in your pipeline that you want to build, or maybe just something out in the market, whether it's in multifamily or not, that you're experimenting with, interested in learning about?
Tired of hearing about AI. So that's almost like the reverse. I think that's a useful tool, certainly. It just, for me personally, I don't like to build. I like to build on top of things that are tried and true, and I don't want to do flash in the pan. It's back to trust, right? We definitely leverage AI. We built our own NLG, which is kind of like ChatGPT, natural language generation, 5 years ago, and we haven't switched over to ChatGPT, for example, or those large language models, because we're nervous about things like their fair housing violations and whatnot. So I'm really interested in these large language models, but so far we've struggled to want to leverage them yet, because it still feels very new. And at our scale, you don't want to accidentally do something that violates fair housing that causes a problem.
But you said that you have tools that are generating posts.
Yeah.
So is that not like a GPT style tool?
I appreciate the question. Yeah. We built that ourselves 5 years ago. So it's something we built from the ground up versus the black box that you're getting off the shelf
But
from
it's
any
a large language model building it. Right.
But then you can put super tight guardrails on it.
Right.
Versus what happens,
Of course. And the hallucinations that it has and all the crazy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So very tight guardrails where, it's just not as nimble, because
it's the same concept, but it's not that open source one. It's your own version.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But so I find those things interesting. I mean, I remember when we first discovered NLG, we were so excited, man. So even though we built it 5 years ago, for 5 years, we've been thinking, oh, we should really build this into our reporting, because we have client services people that every month meet with clients. They review the reports. They type up, bullet points, here's our recommendations. But yet haven't been able to get to a point where we think it's worth it, meaning replacing the person or even augmenting the person. It feels it just hasn't been up to our satisfaction. So even though we built our own reporting platform, we have our own NLG, we don't yet like combine the two because it's not quite there. So anyways, just my point of, I think a lot of companies rush really quick into the sizzle, and we did it early on. We felt that about when we first launched as a company, but as we have gotten bigger, I think you have to be way more choosy about when you lean into the sizzle, because it's the whole like lifetime to build trust and a moment to lose it. I'm just nervous about losing trust.
What's next for you guys? Anything in the pipeline that you want to share?
No, I mean, we talked about the Google automation. We have social automation that just came out. I think those are really helpful for our team to save them time, but also, will be helpful for other people. So those are the most newest things. And now we have to make sure that we continue to build and improve. Because back when we first started with NLG, people's expectations were much lower than they are now that they've seen all these open models. And now my concern is just making sure that, we live up to the standard and put our weight behind it. And then over time, we'll it's like none of our stuff to me appears eye-popping. It just is like what makes sense. So it's like, it makes sense that there should be a machine that recommends where you spend your money. It makes sense to me that there's a machine that checks for fair housing violations. It makes sense that a machine can write our Google posts and Facebook posts. So that all just makes sense to me. So sometimes I'm a little too close to it to know what people really care about, like what the market's going to really care about. So anyways, that doesn't really answer your question well. More of like steady as she goes, I guess, for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your conference. I hope you get a little bit of me time and you're not too overwhelmed with all the craziness here.
I'll be fine. Thank you. Appreciate it, Sydney.